Hey everybody, how's it going? Mike from the Focus Garage here. And in today's video, I just want to take a minute and talk to you guys about my overall thoughts on General Motors as a company. Now, you may be asking what makes me qualified to speak about this. Again, there's a lot of my videos here, just some guy on the internet wanting to share my opinion. But I have owned many of GM vehicles for over a very, very large time frame. So obviously next to me here, you can see that I've got my 2011 Corvette Grand Sport, but some of the older GM vehicles that I've owned, I had a 1989 Pontiac Trans Am GTA, I've had a supercharged Buick Riviera, I've had a Cadillac DeVille, I've had a Saturn S Series, I've had a more recent F-Body, a 2002 Camaro SS. So I've owned, a lot there. And even just with recent, GM vehicles, I've been in the automotive industry for the last 10 or so years. In some roles, I've actually got to drive and test newer GM vehicles. And I just kind of want to share my overall opinion on, what the brand used to be, kind of where they're going and everything like that. Now, I'll start the video off by saying that I'm the type of person who is only more so interested in the enthusiast-focused GM vehicles. In my opinion, a large chunk of what they offer to the general public and their regular type vehicles are just not hitting the mark. When you look at regular cars that they offer, like the Cruze and the Sonic and the Spark, the Malibu, the Impala, everything like that, or Impala, if you will, they just kind of fall short when you compare it to the competition. Now, how have they gotten into this area? How have they stayed like this? I mean, you look back at like the older Impala, the older Malibu from like the, mid 90s, early 2000s, trying to together when they're the Lumina, you've got vehicles like that. And when you compare it to say like a Honda Civic, a Camry, and a Accord or something like that, they're not as reliable. They don't get as good gas mileage. The pricing was very similar. The looks don't hold up. I mean, you're offering a vehicle that doesn't match up to the competition, and they've been stuck in this way for so long. And now transitioning into this more modern time that you've got kind of this CUV crossover SUV vehicle craze, you've got vehicles where GM is covering the entire playing field, or at least they're trying to when it comes to crossovers. You've got so many types of crossover vehicles that they offer. There is the Equinox, the Trailblazer, the Blazer, the Traverse, and I think there's something else I'm forgetting in there. And then you move on to their larger vehicles where you've got, the Suburban and the Tahoe. And then you've got obviously the smaller ones, like you've got the Trax, and then you've got, why do I feel like there's something I'm forgetting there? If there is, I'm gonna toss it up on the screen there. But you've got a lot of different vehicles which are kind of hard to draw the differentiation as far as what somebody's looking for. And it just overcomplicates the market, especially when you're looking at all one brand. And the biggest problem you run into this is that when you're trying to train these salespeople, which if anybody works in the dealership industry, that sales has a very, very high turnover. These people aren't trained on what they're even selling, so they couldn't even tell you the difference between a Blazer or a Trailblazer versus a Traverse versus an Equinox. They're going to be very confused as to what differentiates those vehicles from one another, whether or not what is a third row, what's a two-row vehicle, what powertrain comes standard, all-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, obviously not applicable unless you're looking at like a Tahoe or Suburban. But again, these regular dealership level salespeople aren't always going to know that difference. And it's just over complication with it. And one of the biggest things that GM and Chevy in particular has struggled with year over year, and they're finally starting to turn around recently from what I've seen with reviews of the Equinox, is overall build quality of their vehicles. GMs have been known for the longest time to rust, not hold up, leak oil, have problems like that. And it's a reputation that stays with them. Another struggle that you see here is obviously their multiple branding of offering the same vehicles, which they've tried to kind of narrow down kind of through, a timeline over the last 10, 15, 20 years or so, with getting rid of Pontiac and the like. But you still run into this issue in Saturn too. Rest in peace. Love my Saturns. That S Series was one of the most reliable cars ever made, in my opinion. And as long as you've got a screwdriver and a 10mm socket, you can keep it on the road. But regardless, I'm not here to pay my respects to Saturn in this video. One of the biggest things is you deal with cannibalism from similar vehicles. So there was a time, and there still is a time with certain vehicles, where you can buy the same vehicle as a Chevy, as a Cadillac, as a Buick, And it's relatively the same vehicle, give or take a few cosmetic changes or a little bit of a different interior trim packages and things like that. And it just, you're cannibalizing your own market, or you're complicating your own market at the same time. And it just doesn't make sense for what people are looking for. And then you also have where GM is going through this brand crisis identity where they're trying to take Cadillac and turn it into kind of this German BMW, Mercedes, Audi, performance-driven, luxury kind of sports sedan, performance, brand. They're trying to get away from, your grandpa's Cadillac. And Buick's doing the same thing, and they've been trying to do this for so long with, is that a Buick commercial? Where you've got these people that are valeting a car, they're calling their friends, hey, I'm outside in a new Buick, and they're rolling up, and it doesn't look like your stereotypical Buick, but it's still a Buick nonetheless. And they've been struggling with that as well because Buick still has this overall idea that it's an old person's car. It's the last car somebody purchases before they go ahead and retire and pass away. And that's a very, very hard stigma to lose. So when you've got these kind of classic brands with this classic idea, it's hard to shed that when you've been going with this for so long. So what I would recommend doing is kind of doing a big shakeup here and kind of looking at, from an overall standpoint, with each of GM's brands, whether you've got GMC, Chevy, Buick, Cadillac, what are you trying to accomplish with these brands? Is Cadillac really trying to be a German competitive performance brand? What is Buick trying to be? You've focused that you're trying to get away from being your grandpa's Buick, but what are you trying to be? Are you trying to be, a young millennial Gen Z car? Are you trying to be a middle America, middle class car? Like, you just don't make it clear, and your cars are kind of about that. Like, their cars are just very average. They don't offer anything that beats its competition in any measurable way. And then with Chevy, I understand there's brand evolution. So a lot of times, like with Lexus, for example, you want to get somebody into a Corolla in the beginning, move them in through the brand, and by the end, they're buying a Lexus, GM doesn't really focus through that. Their brand doesn't really translate. Like, I don't see ideally somebody buying a Chevrolet Cruze and then buying a Cadillac CT5, 10 years down the line. I just don't see them focusing on that brand loyalty, that brand reputation to keep people loyal to GM. And what's going to happen is if you have any kind of buyer that's aware of what they're looking at, aware of what they're buying, they're going to notice that, hey, I can get a lot better bang for my buck with, the Japanese competitors, with the German competitors. And they just don't offer a value proposition when it comes to look, performance, features, styling, brand support, warranty, anything when it comes to its competition. I could take each brand and compare it to a competitor, whether, you take like Chevy and you compare it to Toyota or Honda, you take Cadillac, compare it to one of the German brands, Buick, compare it to Subaru or whatever. Buick had the Touareg wagon. That's, screams to me it's a competition to Subaru. Why would anybody buy that over a Crosstrek, over a Forester, over an Outback? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think that is the biggest problem that GM is dealing with, is they're making these cars that are shy of the mark. On paper, it's a cool idea. You've kind of got the right push, the right mindset with the car, but you're just not doing competitive research. You're building these cars that people don't have a reason to purchase your vehicle over something else. For the longest time, I heard that the GM dealership experience is nothing to write home about. You're dealing with these service writers that are trying to upsell you or that don't know how to, make proper service recommendations to your vehicle. You're dealing with inadequate technicians here, where I've heard that Chevy Cruzes have been plagued, the turbocharged engines, with oil leaks. And you've got, that infamous 3.6 with timing chain issues and oil sludge issues. And it's just every single time I look at GM, and again, this is coming from somebody that's owned a lot of GM vehicles. I currently own one here. Just every time you look at anything for Chevy, there's something to ding them for. Aside from the 3800 engine, the supercharged and the naturally aspirated engine that they offered in, the Grand Prix, the Impalas, the Buicks, a lot of things like that. And even those, they were plagued with some issues. They had some intake manifold issues. They had issues with catching on fire with oil leaks. Any of those bodies that those cars came in are known to rust. They've all had transmission issues. Anything that you look at, there's going to be an equal amount of unreliable, problematic things that come with those cars. And don't even get me started on Cadillac with your North Star. That is an engine that you struggled with for darn near 15 odd so years, and you finally perfected it in the year 04 right before you pretty much cut it from all of your cars. You know, they all had the head gasket issues with the head studs and the head gaskets and the burning of the coolant. And from what I've learned in research, the 04 year, which is pretty much the last year that V8, the front wheel drive version, everything like that was produced, they fixed it and then they cut it. Very similar to what Pontiac did with the Fiero back in the late 80s there. So you had the GT in the last year there where they fixed it. All the problems of the earlier Fieros, it started to look good, really become a performance competitor, and you cut it. It seems like that always happens with GM. You've got the Blackwing V8 that they just put in the Cadillac CT series car, which is this awesome twin turbo V8 engine bespoke to Cadillac, and then you axe the car right after making it. And it always seems to me that GM is doing that continually over and over again, where you make this really cool thing. The Northstar was a very cutting edge engine when it came out, with its dry sump and its, front wheel drive, large V8, smaller displacement, good power, everything like that. The Blackwing, really cool twin turbo V8, Fiero, a mid-engine GM performance car. And on paper, it starts off great. The execution of it is not that good. And then through, product evolution, it gets better. And then you kill it right as it gets good. And they do this over and over and over again. And it's just one of those things where you're almost your biggest competitor or your biggest problem is yourselves, where you're just not seeing things through to where they could be, or you're just not coming out with the right idea from the get-go. So if you own a GM, let me know in the comments down below. If you've owned GMs, again, share your thoughts and feedback. I do like GMs. I like more of the performance-oriented, the kind of car enthusiast-focused stuff. I don't see appeal with their regular kind of consumerist brand, which is the biggest problem why they're not doing well compared to their competition, is because they're, again, the biggest takeaway from this is the majority of the GM vehicles that they offer, they're just not competitive, whether that be it in, fuel economy, features, pricing, looks, warranty, anything. There's nothing where they really pull away. I really, for the longest time, liked the ATS-V until you compare it to what you're spending on that car to its competition. Car looks great, but the interior kind of misses the mark. The pricing kind of misses the mark when you look at what it competes with. And just, I don't know. I don't want to spend this video focusing on any one particular GM car. I just kind of want to make my point that I want your input on this. What do you guys think about GM, what they offer? What do they need to do to become more successful? And what do they need to do to remain relevant? I want to see an American company succeed here. I think they've got, obviously, the brand infrastructure. They've got the brand recognition. Now, what do you do to bring to market to make that matter? One interesting statistic that I did want to drop on you guys before closing this one out is if you've managed to stick through this far, I've learned that most of you guys watching these videos are not subscribed. So if you would like to take the time to go ahead and click that subscribe button right down there below and enable that bell for notifications, we would greatly appreciate it. We are always interested in making content that you guys recommend. So if you do subscribe, drop it in the comments down below what kind of videos you'd like to see. Ander and I have the ability here to make videos about whatever you guys want, whether it's motorcycle content, automotive content, whether that be German cars like this Volkswagen here, American cars like this Corvette here, or even other stuff like Ander's got. Anyways, I will catch you guys in the next video.